let's say.
Hey guys, Ben Nash from Pivot Wealth here, and today I'm really excited to be chatting with Oliver. Oliver has been working with us for actually just a little bit over 4 years. We were just chatting about before we fired up the camera with his lovely wife, and yeah, I'm keen to chat about, I suppose, some of the I suppose your take on how you found the process, you know, what some of the surprising things were, and, you know, I suppose what your tips would be for other people in sort of looking at making some of these decisions. Oliver, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ben. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
That's great. Great to have you here. Look, Oliver, maybe where we could start is, can you just tell us a bit about what life sort of looked like before you came to see us?
Yes, so you've basically moved to Australia 10 years ago, and I think while moving around and always being on travel and didn't really look after the money aspect too much, so we always changed places, and yeah, after a while we kind of settled a bit, so we looked at our finances, and basically wanted to see what we need to do for the future. We didn't really have too many problems day to day, but for the long term, we weren't really sure what we should be doing, what we should be looking at, whether it be investment or property or just savings. So usually we just saved. So we came from Germany originally, so it's a whole lot of savings culture when you grew up. So we did mainly that. So yeah, that was basically the first thing to look at, like what should we do longer term, and then set ourselves up for the future. And that's where I met you, Ben, and the team through General Assembly and reached out.
That's right. Yes, yeah, we're still doing quite a lot of stuff with those guys. It's a great community with the General Assembly people, and I think a good sort of lead in for people that you can get a bit of a taste of, you know, different things that to find what resonates for you. But Oliver, I am keen to sort of dive into a bit of the spending prioritization and how we found balance. But before we get there, tell us a bit about what were the main sort of challenges or frustrations for you when we first started talking.
Remember, I think it's the main reason was what should we do with our savings. So we had like a monthly savings goal. Sometimes we met it, sometimes we didn't. So that's, I think, was one frustration. And then the holidays came in a way, and so it always eats up a little bit of savings. And because we didn't have a clear strategy on what we should be doing going forward in the long term, I think we didn't really have a major goal as such to eat up that savings as such. So I think that was probably the main frustration.
Yeah, I think it's hard that, you know, you know that you need to make progress, but if you're not clear on, you know, where you want to be headed, then it's often difficult to motivate yourself to put in the work to get there. And it's easy to, like what you mentioned, where, you know, you're traveling and enjoying yourself, and it's easy to sort of deprioritize those. I suppose getting the financial targets, and you're enjoying your lifestyle, but not getting ahead at the rate that you want. And I think that, you know, for you mentioned, you know, Germans who tend to be pretty sort of sensible and you know, diligent with these sorts of things. But so you actually want you know that you want to be secure in the future, but that doesn't always easily translate into what you should actually do. But what was it that actually prompted you to do something about some of those challenges that you were facing at the time?
I think the main reason was also that we got some inheritance from Germany, and we want to do something smart with it. And yeah, basically to build something for the future, just for ourselves and in the future for the kids. So we just had our first child born. So we thought, like, okay, now we need to really think about what we need to do, and always thought about living in a property as well, but that we own. But that wasn't a key desire. It was more do something that makes sense in the long term. And save up so that we have enough in the longer term. That was the initial starting point. Do something
Yeah.
smart with money.
And understanding what's possible, I think, as well, for especially for people that migrate to Australia. It's like you know how things work, from in the country that you were born in or where you grew up or whatever. But and then you come here, and because money is one of these things that everybody's got an opinion about, it's like, well, what should I be listening to here, and what should I be ignoring? And you need to do something, but with all that noise there, it's like you end up with this information overload and you're overwhelmed, and then it just makes it really even harder to make a decision.
Yeah, that totally, I totally agree with that, and that really helped with the process. As you turned out when we first come to see you about our strategy and what's possible and what we should be looking at and what's important to us, that really helps clear the path. So before it was more like, should we listen to A or B? So just to go through the process really helped setting ourselves up and really be clear on what we wanted to do, even for the first year and a half or 2 years, and then we can change it again. I think now we have a different perspective on things as well, so that whole process helped a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And we've done a lot, and I'm excited about some of the things that are coming up for you. But what would you say from your side? What were the top sort of 2 or 3 things that you found most helpful or useful for you guys?
I think the initial strategy session, I think, was probably the best that we have done, and then I think the monthly checks-ins to get us on the path, and as well as how you structured our finances. I think those 3 things really helped us get there, and then over the long term, I think we can work through what helps. It's like a steer correction here and there, but it's broadly there. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think it's like you got to have, I know for you guys, and especially if you're going from a situation where you maybe haven't prioritized, saving or investing at the rate that you want to be prioritizing saving or investing going forward, that I think for you guys, it's probably fair to say that having the accountability to know that you've got someone that's checking in, that even if you didn't, and I know that there were I can remember some conversations that we had about different things that meant that we didn't quite hit the targets that we'd initially set, but also that the conversation is coming, so you don't get too far off track, and then sort of get back in once give you the motivation, I suppose, to push things forward.
Exactly.
So just on the strategy piece, because I know that for you guys, like you said, that you'd been doing a lot of traveling. I know that you did and still do have a lot of lifestyle goals. We've talked about a bunch of things. I think I know that over the years, some of the different things that we've the different strategies that we've explored with you are like things like taking extended periods of time out of the workforce, which has happened probably not quite to the length that we would choose if we could wave a magic wand. But some of those, working part-time for a period of time, you've got 2 young kids, making sure that you're present and around for them, but doing it in a way that's not sort of sabotaging your financial future or their financial security in the future as well as some really good holidays along the way. How did you find, what was your, I suppose, what was the shift that happened, or how would you explain how that process had helped you to make those decisions?
I think it's when I look back, it's a visibility on. I think we've always had a good sense on the budget. Also, when we set up the strategy, we could kind of quickly say where the outflows are. But I think the key was the transparency that you provided on putting it in, for example, in a modeling tool, and see how that goes over the year or over the several years, and where we should cut back or have a bit more flex. I think that transparency really helped. So we can now more aware on where the money flows, even though it kind of knew it, but didn't really see it happening. So on paper, and transparency. I think this was really helpful, and
Yeah, and I
that
think
helped
that
shift maybe some of the priorities around as well.
yes, priorities is a good word to use, because making the very best financial decisions for you and for your family and for anyone that's sort of listening along is that it depends on you. It depends on what's important to you now. It depends on how you want your situation to change over time and what those priorities are, and they sometimes shift around as well. But I think one of the things that I found and I have the benefit of having seen it come together for people a whole bunch of times, is being able to say, well, if I work, what is the impact if I work an 8-day fortnight versus a 9-day fortnight versus a 10-day fortnight, all right next to each other, and then what is the difference now, and what does that mean for our savings over the time that we've got, childcare costs and schooling costs, and what does that mean for our bottom line balance sheet in 20 years from now, and being able to do that quickly. Because I know, like, for you guys, that you'd actually, I think I'm recalling it right, that you would, when we started working together, that you had one of those apps that tracked all of your expenses, and you sort of knew where the money was going. But it wasn't translating into actually hitting any numbers or doing that. What would you say? What would you say is the difference? Like, what was the difference between having a really close handle on the day to day, but then translating it to moving forward? What would you say that gap actually is?
I think, yeah, just looking back, I still kind of like looking at where the money's going, so still do that, but I'm not eyeing it that specifically anymore, because now I feel like the macro vision that we set up and the macro buckets that we created work better, because I know the money is, for example, going, paying off the bills, and then there's a bit of money for what we're going to spend, and some of the savings. So I think it's these really helps plan that strategy, what you need to do during the year better than day to day. So I think the gap was, I always saw the money going out, but I never really saw the other kind of areas growing. Even though I was like saved some, but then we took it out again. So I think now we set it up so we don't really touch it, or we kind of really know what's going on. And if we need to adjust, then we adjust it once in 6 months or a year, and then it works out for the rest. So it does the job really well. I think, yeah, I'm not sure what's the main difference, but I think the main difference, just from feeling it, I think it's like, it's more worry-less, like how we structured it now.
Yes, I think the automation is really helpful. That out of sight, out of mind, and using small barriers to between you and your money ultimately has a pretty powerful impact. But I think, if I can recall back to that strategy meeting way back when, it's the ability we can sort of tweak we use a savings plan, a budget, which you can sort of tweak live. You see what the difference is between, spending $400 a week and spending $800 a week. But then not only that, what that does for your savings today, but how that actually feeds into, your goals for the next sort of 5, 10, 20 years. And the bottom line impact is something that's generally fairly powerful. And I know that, that was one of the ways that we were able to make sure that your financial success was prioritized at the right level, relative to, I suppose the lifestyle or other goals that you wanted to do. But Oliver, so we sort of talked a bit about the journey, but what are some of the sort of the tangible results or outcomes that you guys have achieved as a result of that process?
I think, yeah, definitely, we saved up, saved up quite a amount of money, and we now able to purchase our first property, which I think we're really happy about. So that's, I think, a massive achievement. Exactly, we're really happy about that. So I think that wouldn't have gone about, because initially we always thought like, oh, we'll never be able to afford something like that, especially coming here to Australia, and it's like ridiculous prices. So I think to do the planning and the stepping stones and like the different strategies that are available to you that we weren't aware of, so that you basically helped us understand and work through. Really gives us different stepping stones to make that happen. And yeah, I think continue the journey from here onwards. I think
That's
was yeah,
exciting.
yeah, exactly.
It's very exciting. I'm excited for you, and I think it's a common one. Like if you are sort of an expat living in Australia, or that's setting yourself up here, or if you're not in a position where you've got a lot of family to help you out with getting into the property market. It definitely takes some doing. We need to do some saving. We need to probably even we did some investing for a while and build up your assets so that you're not just plugging away at saving, earning 1% interest on your money, but then taking those steps incrementally over time to make them come together. What would be your advice for somebody who was looking at ultimately wanting to get into the property market but feeling that it's all just unachievable?
I think looking back, I think it's always start early with something small and set up um, different saving strategies with your what your goals are. So it doesn't I think start earlier is always better, and then look at get some advice exactly what I did with Ben to just understand what's possible, different saving strategies, and then start small and get there. I think that's probably the best advice I could given. Just talk to someone who has understanding about the whole different financial systems that are available to you and use them.
Yeah, and don't just bury your head in the sand either, and just say too hard basket, because it's not going to get any easier. The property prices just continue to increase, and that means you need to save more and invest more, and it just means that it takes longer. So taking action, no matter where you need to get to, taking action now is what's going to start driving the results. But I'm keen to dive into that, because we spoke about property, like we explored it 4 and a bit years ago, and then we've looked at it basically every year since. When we talk about it, it's always an option that's there. It's obviously for the first little bit it wasn't the right option for you guys, but then it became more achievable. Tell us, like, what do you think ultimately gave you the confidence to take the leap and get into the market?
I think it's probably the education, and then talking with you and the team around it, and also understanding the different numbers that impacts it as well. I think the as we discussed before, like the different impacts on your cash flow, and what you can do or what you need to do with your money, and then put it into a planner and the modeling. I think that really helped, and I think it's more the long-term perspective, and the modeling aspect, and that makes the mind shift, as well as talking with you and the team more around the difference in property versus investment and things like that. So I think educating yourself on the different pathways, I think, really helped me and Alex as well.
Yeah, and I think you can. It's like pretty as well common when you're in, you've got a young family. Childcare is not cheap. You go through these peak spending years where it's almost like a private schooling fees just to have your kids in childcare, and depending on what sort of how much of a rebate you get, it can be $20,000-$30,000, sometimes even more than that, a year per child. That I think that, like, for you guys, and one of the things that we always want to look at is, like, let's make sure that we've got a good we've got the money to be able to afford the property today, but then let's make sure that we're also we've got enough money left over that we're going to be able to pay down the debt against it, or at least build up assets to equalize the debt that's against that property in a time frame that we're happy with as well. But tell us, Oliver, how have you found the property as a first home buyer? How have you found the property buying process itself, and what tips would you give for people that were about to jump into it themselves?
I think I found it pretty confusing and overwhelming. So I think it took us probably just to get our head around it for a year and time for looking around and just going into what the price range is, what are the different suburbs, and what we actually want to do, and also switched our perspectives a bit more on what we want to buy and what we don't want to buy and things like that. So it took it's very confusing. So I think what really helped is also through you and the team to get connected with other professionals in the space, like your mortgage broker, or we also looked into a buyer's agent, which really helped us sort through like the cracks of the market and what's available. So I think I would advise people looking towards that. So that really helped us.
Yeah, and I think it's hard, again, if you don't understand and people are naturally conservative, that you don't want to, that fear of making a mistake and doing the wrong thing or something that you regret later is hard. But knowing that you've got the right support with people that are, and you've tested things in a robust way, can give you the confidence to get, I suppose, to manage that fear. I think the uncertainty is always level of nervousness, when you're making any big decisions, is always there. But knowing that you've got, multiple people that are going, this is okay, you've got this, and to give you the support to to actually get it done is really important. What do you think? What would be different if you were going it alone? If you didn't have that help, what do you think would be different for you guys right now?
I think even now, every day, we think about whether it's the right decision or not. So I think it's good to have people there who do day to day and can guide you in the right direction, whether property A or B is the right way to go, or go it at all and go through all the hoops. There's always another thought that comes up in your mind that you're like, oh, should I stop now? I'm not going to go ahead with it. So I think that's really important to have someone there on your side to help you through that.
And I think especially with the property market at the moment, where it's it's so hot, that it gives you the confidence that you are getting a decent place and decent value, and not walking into a
agree. Agree with that. I think we had lots of discussion with all the team.
Yeah. So and Oliver, how are you guys feeling about your money now compared to how you were feeling before we met?
I think more at ease. I think it's still difficult to manage like the day to day, but I think it's a bit more straightforward on and very at ease in terms of what we can achieve over the long term. Before it was like really unsure and uncertainty what will happen, even though we don't know what's going to happen now either. But it feels more like a straightforward pathway than like figuring out what we need to do.
Yes, well, I think no one's got a crystal ball, but knowing that you've covered the bases, knowing that you covered all the bases in a way that there's not something big that you're missing that's going to create problems is generally something that can help be fairly reassuring with that confidence. Oliver, what we've found is that when people haven't used a financial advisor before, or haven't gone through this sort of financial advice process, they often don't know what to expect. What surprised you guys most about the process?
I think surprise is more the deep dive into the strategy, and I think the different options that you explained to us, and the different kind of pathways you could take, and the tools that you have to make that visible to people as well. I think that was probably the most surprising part. I think also to talk through that with someone who really understands, and you understand other people's pathways as well. So it's easier, I think, if you do it day to day to understand what's going on. But I think the surprising part was really like the transparency and different options available, and then what we've learned on the way as well.
Yeah, I think I know that you're a fairly analytical sort of person. That's what you do for your job. You're obviously pretty intelligent with what you do as well. One thing I found with people in that sort of situation is that sometimes they can beat themselves up a bit, thinking that they should be able to do it all themselves. Like, I think because we get money deposited into our bank account every week or month or whatever from our pay, we feel like money should be easy, but there are so many layers to it that it's like what you do. It's its own specialty into itself. What advice would you give to somebody else that was having those thoughts crossing their mind?
I think just have an initial chat and see what's out there and what are the different, as you mentioned, the different facets. I see it in my job. I'm a consultant, so it's like everybody has a slightly different problem, but and that's why they reach out and we'll find to solve it for them. And then from another perspective, I feel like know how numbers work, but finance is just a little bit. So it's better to have someone there who works with that every day and really cuts through what's available and really layers it out in plain English, and then that really helps because there's so much you can learn and so much you can do that you don't probably, unless you're a professional in the space, don't get your head around.
Exactly. And it's like you're a consultant, you have a consulting model. Your consulting model is very similar to the approach that we take. It's like, let's get some goals in place. There's some things that we want to achieve. Then let's understand what are all the things that are going to impact our ability to achieve the goals, and what are the options that we should explore. Let's explore them. Let's talk about them. What are the trade-offs? What are the risks? Then once we decide on the best pathway, then we need to put it into an action plan to get results, and then implement that plan so that it translates. And I think for mine, it's like I've been just sort of blowing our own horn for a second that we've been fortunate enough to be recognized for the work that we do with our process through a number of awards. One in particular, we won an award for innovation, but the innovation was really just the consulting framework that's been around for I don't even know, hundreds of years probably as well. But I think it's just, there's that you don't know what you don't know. So it's hard to know what tools and tactics and strategies you can overlay into that. And then the mistakes that people need to avoid to give you the confidence to not only you could consult to yourself, but it's not hard. It's a lot harder if you don't have that deep level of knowledge, because it's going to be difficult for you to take action off the back of it without knowing that there's something that you're missing. What advice would you... Go on. Sorry.
I was just saying the approach, I think is very similar as you said, but how the techniques are then based on your profession, so they're then totally different. So it helps me explore what's available to me. So
yes,
that really was surprising, because I think now reflecting back on it, it's probably the surprising part. For me, it's the same process, but it gives me a whole lot of new opportunities.
It is, yeah. I was talking to a client of ours the other day that's an IT security consultant, IT services, and it's exactly the same. It doesn't matter if you're, if you're consulting for Accenture or for, for someone with their money, or a building project or whatever. It's the approach is the same, but the levers and rules are different. What advice would you give, Ollie, for someone that was thinking about getting advice to how can they find someone that's good, that is going to actually deliver results for them? What should they be looking for?
Speak to someone that you get recommended as well, from someone that has used the service before, or for me it was touching base, getting to know you. Because it wasn't more of a recommendation, I went out and searched for what's available, and we had an initial chat and understand each other's priorities and get to know each other. I think that helped me trust you and then go through the process. But otherwise as well, find someone that you get recommended, friends or another professional.
I would say to try and find someone with a magnificent beard, but my beard actually was pretty short back 4 years ago, so it actually couldn't have been that. Sorry. You go.
It's like, yeah, do your due diligence and yeah, meet the people, and like understand the process, ask a lot of questions on what they're going to do, how it's going to help you, and how you get to know each other. I think that helped us.
Yeah, and I think that the questions, and I know that you had a lot of questions when we first started talking, because you want to make sure that you're making the right decision. That for someone that's thinking about going down this path, don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what any good professional will be able to answer those questions for you, and in a way that makes you comfortable. If they can't, then they're probably unlikely to be the right person for you. Ollie, what sort of situations do you think that are where people should actually be trying to use a financial advisor? Like, when should someone be looking to use financial advice?
I think, yeah, definitely at big spending decisions. I think like property or putting all your money in Bitcoin, or I don't know. But yeah, big spending decisions I think would be good. And then also, if you have something, either you never got a basically ahead of your financial goals, that would be a good starting point as well. Or if you actually don't know where you're heading in the long term, I think those are probably the three things for me.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
think it's
every time you're unsure, speak to someone who has understanding of a certain profession.
Yeah, the long term comment is an interesting one, because sometimes, like, you need to have you need to have capacity to actually do some stuff with financial advice. So if you don't have any, if you're still really early on in the journey, then maybe you need to put some foundations in place. But even if we've been working with a number of people recently that they just it's not like they had piles and piles of money, but they just want to get that clarity and see where they're headed, and make sure that they're okay with that. Before they, so that they can course correct now if they want. And these people, and we do work with a lot of people that we take through the process on an ongoing basis, but these people specifically, they weren't looking for that. They just wanted to have that plan so they could say, okay, I'm happy, I'm going to make some decisions now. And I'm really confident, because they were super diligent with their money, that they're going to work towards it on their own. So sometimes often that in itself is a good prompt to do that. Just make sure, if you are going to go down that path, that you've got someone that's got a robust process to deliver that for you, because not all financial planners work exactly the same. So just make sure, again, going back to that, asking plenty of questions to ensure that they're going to deliver the results and outcomes for you. Ollie, last question, mate, and thank you very much for your time. You're paying us fees every year for the support that we give you, and obviously it's a trade-off and a value exchange. But for someone that's sitting on the fence, like, what do you feel makes those fees worth paying?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ben. I think it's probably two things. It's like the ease of mind on one side, that you're doing the right decision, but the other thing is really the long-term value that we get out of it. I think just looking back, where we are now, I think it is probably huge, huge
That's it.
upside we see. Haven't calculated it, but I think definitely seeing that from the progress we've made.
Yeah, and I think, like, I can't remember if you actually asked this question, but it's one that we get a lot, that people are saying, what are the results going to be for me? But unfortunately, we don't know. We're unable to say that, because it is that consulting model that we were talking about, that you'd never know what decision someone's going to make until you go through the process. But once you do, and it's you do need to take that bit of a leap of faith. You start to get the results, and then you look back and you say, okay, actually, yes, I did this, and this, which I probably wouldn't have done in the same way or at the same rate without it. So what would your advice be for someone that's in that situation, Ollie?
That's a good question, though. I think it's on that one, I don't really know an answer. I think it's just go through the process, I would think, and see what it does to you. I think because it, even if I always had like clear mind and clear things in my mind, but it totally changed perspective. on and set its goal sharper, I think, and really put a strategy in place to get there. I think that's probably totally different than just do it on your own. On your own, you never have someone who's tracking you or asking you to start hard questions as well. Even though I think we're still doing similar lifestyle than before, but we're way ahead on where we've been.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. Well, it's been a pleasure to be part of that journey, and excited for what you got coming up. Ollie, thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, and talk to you very soon.
Cheers, Ollie. See you, mate. See you, team.